Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining my Festivus live stream. I'm Jason Odell. My Substack is The Photographer's Perspective. I appreciate you all joining. I'm going to try my best to monitor in the chat and just have a little fun because I know that the rest of this week is going to be holiday busy time for a lot of people. So it's good to see you out there. I need to make sure that my chat is live. Yes, it is. I see you out there. Hey, Josh, Ron, Carol. Hey, Jess. And Frank, yes, you can hide behind your name, but I know it is you, Frank. It is good to see you all today. And what I'm so of course, um, if you watched Seinfeld, and I'm dating myself apparently to the younger people out there, but we all know what we're talking about. Um, there was a Festivus for the rest of us, so George Costanza's father, Frank Costanza, decided to come up with another holiday. Now, I don't have a Festivus pole. I just have some camera lenses. That's okay. But if you recall that before you could celebrate Festivus, you had to have the airing of the grievances. I got a lot of things wrong with you people, and now you're going to hear about them, as I believe he said, to paraphrase. I don't have that much negative things to say. I could say a lot of stuff about grievances from the last year, but I'm going to try to keep it simple. So, just a few of the little peeves that happen. Hey, Randy, and hey, David and Terry. Yes, that's my mother in the chat, so give her a hard time. It's all good. We're just here to eat latkes and celebrate. A couple things that photographers do that drive me nuts, and I've said them before in the past, but I'm just going to mention a couple. Um, Shooting like this with your lens hood reversed kills me. Okay? Take your lens hood, put it on your camera, stick it on there, and you get two benefits. One, most importantly, it blocks stray light from hitting your lens. And so, unless you really like the lens flare look, this lens hood will help that. Number two, your lens hood protects your camera from bumping into things way better than any cheap $10 piece of glass filter will ever do. And I see there are times when there are situations where maybe your lens hood isn't deployed, but I've seen people using it and they can't even get their hands around the zoom ring to use, so it's kind of crazy. Anyway, so continuing on with that, the other thing that really drives me nuts is when I'm with other photographers, and if this is your personal preference, don't take it personally, the focus beep indicator. Some people love the beep. I do not love the beep, especially if you're in a group and you hear someone beep and when they press the focus. And I know people who've said, like, straight up, well, if I don't hear the beep, I don't trust that the camera's in focus. Well, learned. It's okay. It's all right. The focus beep is just one of those things that I don't care about. Plus, you know, if you're using your camera anywhere indoors, it's super annoying. So, I have to use my camera indoors this coming weekend. I've been asked by a friend to photograph their, thank God, very small wedding up in Denver. So I have been playing around with uh, trying to find flash units. And oh, yeah, I have all that stuff and soft boxes and things. And the good news is, if you don't want to break your bank on flash units, these little guys from Godox, Godox. These are the little ones, the TT350 series. They come with a variety. You can get them in a variety of hot shoe styles. So this is the kind that works on Olympus and Panasonic. Pretty awesome because they are teeny and they're also very inexpensive. I have the the wireless radio commander unit here. So you put this on your camera, and then you can go around and they don't beep unless you tell them to. But you can control up to four different groups of flashes via radio, meaning it goes around corners and stuff. Unlike the old ones that my old Nikon speed lights before they went radio, you had to have IR, and that was a mess, especially outdoors. So this thing is great, and these flash units are like I want to say $80. They're crazy inexpensive. They take two AA batteries. I've got a pair of them. I'll be bringing them up to Denver this weekend for a wedding. And please say whatever thoughts and prayers you have for me, because I am not a big wedding photographer. That is really not my thing. So, um, anyway, so we got the reverse lens hood, we got the focus beep, and then just one other minor grievance, and it's not even the worst one, but let me tell you, Heathrow, London Heathrow Airport, I'm not a huge fan. Um, just in general, it's such a an amazing cluster going through Heathrow. Now the good news is I only went through Heathrow one time this year, and I did not have to change terminals, so that was okay. But there's airports where you can go there and they say, leave 2 hours ahead of time or whatever. And there's ones that you need 2 hours. There's ones that you can do in 1 hour. Like here at my hometown in Colorado Springs, I can get there an hour and be fine. Heathrow, you better be there 2.5 to 3 hours ahead of time, because it is mayhem. And if you have to change terminals through Heathrow, um, you better have a long layover, because every time I've had to change terminals in Heathrow, it's usually going from Terminal 5 to Terminal 3 or vice versa. They put you first, you get off the plane, then you get on a bus. Then the bus takes you through to the next terminal. Then you get into the next terminal, and surprise, you get to go through security again. Never mind that you just got off a plane and were secure. I get it. Security needs to be tight, and it's better to have good security than bad security. But surprise, that little package of toiletries they gave you that has a little toothpaste. Surprise, you've got a liquid or gel that didn't get into a bag, and now your bag has been flagged. And oh my gosh, it can be an absolute nightmare. And I had Jerome. It's in the comments. It was Jerome saying how his nephew was a wedding photographer and he was the second shooter once and never again. Yeah, no kidding, right? It's just absolutely crazy. So for those of you in the chat, if you have not subscribed to my Substack, most of you probably have. I appreciate if you do. I also appreciate the little heart button, because it pumps up the number of likes it gets on the replay later on. Yes, I am shamelessly self-promoting this, but hey, what can I say? The final thing I want to say, in terms of the airing of grievances phase of Festivus, is that having a camera, no matter how big or small, it is not an all access pass to trespass on people's property. And it has just gotten to the point where many people just have really ruined photography in certain locations for the rest of us who want to play by the rules, because I'll go over the fence, oh, I'll go into this yard, who cares, because I've got a camera and I have a tripod, and that makes me somehow above the law in terms of traveling on private property. So I know for a fact that there's places around, especially in the US, that have just shut themselves down or fenced things off completely to photographers because some bad actors decided that their camera was a press pass, and it isn't. So, hey Lefty, good to see you. Anyway, that's just the grievances I have now. For feats of strength, I don't have my big Nikon kit anymore. So I really don't have much to heavy lift. In fact, I can just do curls with this thing, but that's not exactly a feat of strength. Here's my 100 to 400 equivalent to 800 millimeter lens, and I can hold this with one hand. It's very easy. So what can I say? My camera got smaller. I don't have to lift nearly as much. My pack. I was weighing things in my pack for this trip to Namibia that I've got coming up next October. Okay. Heads up, I'm going to offer it again. I'm working on the dates to go back to Africa 2027, probably mid-October after Yom Kippur, because, we got to keep holidays in mind. And some of these airlines have hand luggage, or i.e. carry-on luggage limits, where 8 kilograms. And I can get my bag down to about 6, including my laptop if I go small. I can keep it under 8 even if I put that 100 to 400 in there. Pretty amazing. That's just a cool thing. So, if Africa and photographing Africa is anywhere near your your bucket list, um, consider following me to see when that comes out. As soon as I have the dates and the pricing, it's going to be available, but it's going to be African wildlife, landscapes, desert dunes, all kinds of stuff, and some night sky photography. It works out. So 2027, yes, mark your calendar because it's a big trip and you're gonna have to plan ahead. So, with that in mind, I thought I would just go through some of my shots, and I've got a large gallery that I linked to. I think in November sometime of what I flagged as some of my favorite shots from the past year. How do I figure them out? Well, I use Lightroom. I tag my shots with stars or colors or whatever during the course of the year, and then I filter on them and I can find them. So let's jump over to my Lightroom and let's see if I can make this work. Yay! Okay, and so we'll start the year in Southern California, which, by the way, I'm going back to in just a few weeks. This is a Brandt's cormorant. They nest on the cliffs on La Jolla, and they don't look like much from afar, but when the males get their breeding plumage, it's the male. He's doing his happy dance here, his breeding dance. Um, then they get this wonderful blue color here in their underneath in their throat, and they have these wonderful blue eyes. So this is a male Brandt's cormorant. You can also see they got a little shimmer going on in their feathers. They're very beautiful, and it's a very fun trip. If you are thinking about if you wanted a last minute thing, talk to me. I can maybe squeeze you in and get you on the workshop coming up at the middle of January. It's about a month out. And of course, no trip to La Jolla would be complete without the pelicans. So we've got them in breeding plumage as well. So typical brown pelican, they don't look like much during the rest of the year, other than being impressively large. But during the breeding season, which is right now, they get this wonderful red and gold plumage, the red throat. The skin turns bright red. It's very cool. Now, one of the reasons I go to this spot every year is because the backgrounds are epic. So when you're going to do bird photography, it's always good to go somewhere reliable. And that La Jolla is absolutely reliable because there are plenty of birds. And if you miss the first one, just come back for the next one. But the backgrounds here are great because we're in the Pacific. We're on a cliff. We're looking down at the water. So you get these backgrounds. Here's a royal tern coming in to land. I do not know if this is a left or a right royal tern, but it is a tern nonetheless. And you can see the gulls in the foreground. They come down on the rocks. But the backgrounds you get, because it's the blue Pacific with the foam, is awesome. Now there's also the sea lions here. So who doesn't like a baby sea lion? This is the California sea lion. It's a little pup, and it was sitting there. So in between taking photos of the birds, we also take pictures of the sea lions and the seals. Here is we made a side trip to the San Diego River. This is a tricolored heron, and it was doing the thing with its wings where it's trying to shade its view so it can see and fish. This is just good stuff. Um, Here comes another one right at you, incoming. This one's immature, so it's a juvenile, so it doesn't have the bright breeding plumage. But again, that wonderful Pacific backdrop as we have all the birds flying in, and you will have. We had 4 days there of repeated attempts to go back and not only get our settings dialed in, but but practice the settings themselves. Then another little side trip out to a place called Santee Lakes. It's a recreation area. It's an RV park. They've got man-made lakes, But when the light hits the grass and the cattails in the background in the early morning, you get these wonderful reflections. And that means you get color in your pictures that you wouldn't otherwise get if it was just a bird sitting on a lake. So this is a American coot, and there are hundreds of them there. They do their coot things, and you can get all kinds of moments. And then they get into coot fights when they are uh, what do you call it? When you start throwing them food, they can start getting a little aggressive towards each other, but we don't mind. It's okay. Okay. So this is one of the toughest shots to get on the trip because you've got to be ready and pre-focused and then hope that your camera can track them. It's very, very hard, but generally speaking, we all get a couple of those. Here's a ring-necked duck. You don't normally see the ring, but there it is, that little iridescent sort of magenta, almost mauve ring around its neck. And like I said, there's the seals there, so we get those too. Love that background, that sea foam background. Otherwise, it's just a gull in space. It's just not as exciting. And then you've got the black oyster catchers, which are a different species than the ones back east, which are the American oyster catchers. I have some shots of them too, and there was this pair of them, and they would periodically go do their thing and call in midair. And if your settings are right, you can get them in flight. Here's a snowy egret, our pelican again. And then we were watching the sea lions, and the waves would just come in and crash over them. And so I waited for the wave to hit, and I put my camera into burst mode, and then I just absolutely, let it rip. And so then you get this really cool dynamic background shot. I found that to be particularly fun. Here's our American, or sorry, black oyster catcher again. You catch him landing and get him with the wings up. Oh, good to see you, Sister Bobby. Nice that you joined. Very cool. Glad that you can be here on Festivus. I took another trip back to California because I got invited to do a little workshop on Catalina Island, home of the Catalina wine mixer. Yes, that really is a thing now. Go figure. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go rent Step Brothers with Will Ferrell in it, and you'll know what I'm talking about. And we were fortunate enough to see a pair of bald eagles on that trip, and so this was very cool. You'll notice if you look closely, it has a band on its leg and it's carrying some kind of fish that it got. Okay, now we're switching over to Florida. Now I am going back to Florida in April, I believe, and this is a Chuck Will's widow, and they just sit there and they're more or less they're nocturnal. They sleep all day. So this was taken in available darkness. I like to joke because it was in the underbrush and you're looking down from a boardwalk. But I'm going to go back there in April. I have room on that trip if anyone wants to do some really fun bird photography in a really easy place to get around. All these places have boardwalks over the wetlands, and you can just fire away, so to speak. Here's a green heron. Green heron's one of my favorite birds, especially if you get them in the nice golden light in the early morning or late afternoon. I like to think that this is the three tenors. These are wood storks, and here is a I think it's a either a common grackle or a boat-tailed grackle. I can't remember, but very close. You get that wonderful subject isolation, shallow depth of field, and even the grackles, if you get them in the right light, they've got that pretty iridescent bluish black in their feathers. They're not just the plain black bird. I think this is a palm warbler, but I'm not sure. But the cool thing about this shot is if you look really closely in its beak, it's got a little fly or some kind of insect. It's in its beak. Now, I had no idea that was going on when I took this picture. It just happened to be there. So I will take successes even if they're happy accidents, even if they're unintentional. Classic red-winged blackbird. And you wait for them to sing or call. And if you're lucky, you get them with the mouth open, sitting on the reed. Otherwise, it's just a bird on a stick or a burb, as Jess points out in the chat. There comes that wood stork again. And speaking of wood storks, we had a full moon on this trip. And so I set up with my clients and we were, trying to pre-visualize, okay, we want a bird to come into the frame. And so again, you just have to get lucky with these, but fortunately in the late afternoon, the birds coming into roost and then they appear and one of them happened to fly across the moon and I got this shot of it. So a little pre-visualization, so to speak, did the trick. All right, moving on. Did a workshop in Oregon, starting in the Columbia River Valley. This is Lateral Falls. I love that basalt in the background there. Um, so sometimes this is the shot that reminds me that if I had tried to zoom out and get the whole wide shot, the sky up at the top would have pretty much been blown out. So I went for the long exposure with the stream as the leading line in the foreground and this nice waterfall in the background. And then you can get tight on it, and this one I chose to make monochrome. And this one goes with. Did you Photoshop that? No, because I made it black and white, which is not how your eye actually sees it. But nobody seems to have a problem with black and white pictures. So here we go. This is the base of that falls, hitting onto that lava rock, and then the signature waterfall, of course, in all of the Columbia River Gorge is Multnomah Falls right here. With the bridge, you can climb up to that, and if you climb up on that bridge, you quickly find that you get a lot of mist and spray all over uh, your camera lens. But it's fun. Another angle of again, this is Multnomah Falls in the Columbia River Gorge. All of these were shot with my OM system, OM1 camera, and tripod here. Get the long exposure. This one's probably a couple of seconds. Love the lush green. And if you go somewhere like this, bring your polarizing filter because otherwise that green turns kind of gray and the leaves just have a little glare on them. So that polarizing filter really helps you with these. Then we moved out to the coast. This is the Yaquina Head lighthouse. We went down there on that rough, uneven cobblestone down there, and we shot the lighthouse and the tide pools. This one makes a good desktop wallpaper, I think. Point down and get a picture of the rocks. Here's a sunset. This one's clearly not one exposure. This is HDR because if I had tried to expose for the sky and for the rocks, I would have had black rocks and or blown out sky. It just doesn't work too well unless you've got maybe a. I think some of those folks with those 100 megapixel like Fuji GFX systems or the Phase One cameras. I had a client with a Phase One camera once. Could probably get this all in one capture, but the rest of us use the HDR to do them. So these are from a place called Seal Rock in along the Oregon coast, just south of Newport, Oregon, which is a beautiful place to visit. If you're interested in Oregon, you should check out my workshop there in May, going to the coastal redwood forest up near Crescent City, California, and then the southern Oregon coast near Brookings. That's a fun landscape coastal redwood workshop, really fun. These shots were from Newport Harbor. Great place to do a little photo walk and just look for shadow and light and color. I think that was really fun. Hey, Paulie. Happy Festivus to you. Good to see you. All right, so what's this one? This is fishing nets with intentional camera movement. So I used a slow-ish shutter speed, maybe, I don't know, quarter of a second or so, and I just pan the camera up and down, a little jiggle, and you never know what happens, and it renders this into abstract. It's very fun to do, and something that I really enjoy doing. I hope to have a live class on long exposure soon online. Here's the boardwalk. And here I just tried to frame it to get the leading lines of the planks to go through and then have those colorful park benches in the background. So I don't know. It was just something different. Another waterfall. This one was in Silver Falls State Park. Now here the sun was already, by the time we got there, the sun was peeking up over the top. So what do you do here? This one is a combination of long exposure, an HDR merged for the exposures, and I stopped the lens way down. So you see that starburst in the sun, and that starburst in the sun is not something I added in Photoshop. It is produced by the lens aperture blades itself. It's a property of the lens. And here was a case where I was constantly wiping the spray off of the front element of my lens. It was just a mess because I had a polarizer on there too. In May, I took a group of clients to one of my favorite photographic playgrounds, and that's in a old junkyard called Old Car City. It's about an hour and change north of Atlanta, Georgia. And it is amazing. It is 40 acres of old, rusted, vehicles in various states of decay. And here is where I like to teach close up photography. And part of the reason I like to teach close up photography here is because if you try to do wide angle shots of these cars, they're all too close together. It's jumbled, and you can't really get good shots. So here's a Studebaker pickup truck, believe it or not. And one of the techniques I will teach on this class is something called focus stacking, and that's where you shift the focus plane between, 8, 9, 10, 10 images. So each shot is focused at a slightly different point further and further back, and then you merge them all together in software so you get everything sharp and focus, much more so than you could just by trying to use the traditional stop down the camera technique. And I just love the rust, the colors, the chrome, the moss, the algae, everything growing on these things. Just it's such a fun place to get lost. You can't really get lost; it's a big loop. But if you have a camera, you can just spend hours in here just looking for fun shots to get. Here's an old Mercury, and yes, I used Photoshop to enhance the colors and the textures in this photo. Old school bus. No shortage of subjects here. And plus, for some people, it's a trip down memory lane because they see cars that maybe your parents or grandparents had. Oh, we had one of those when I was growing up. It's always a fun time. Here's an old Dodge. The hood ornaments. This is a Pontiac. Um, Fun fact, all of those names from GM cars, brands, Pontiacs, Cadillacs, those were all Native American names and places in Michigan. So go figure, they named them after them. But really fun stuff. And here we had some dew on this, another Pontiac hood ornament. Fun. And Cadillacs too. Here's a Ford. That P is really an R, but it is a Ford. The peeling paint, the rust, just fun. And lots of green and red color contrast, so complementary colors. That's what makes some of these my favorite photos. Another one of those hood ornaments. Now this one, okay, so here's summertime. Put a hummingbird feeder in the backyard. got a hummingbird actually came in. It liked these little, I'm not sure what kind of flowers those are, some kind of legume or something, but they really like those. So I was just happy that I got a shot of this hummingbird in my backyard over the summer, and I hope they come back next year. I'm going to put out the feeder again for them, and hopefully they show up because I love taking pictures of hummingbirds. But they're also really hard because by the time you focus on them, they are almost out of the frame. And what I really love about this shot is that okay, I got the wings up, I got it in focus, but if you look really closely on the face and the around the head of this hummingbird, you can see the pollen grains on it, which is very very cool. Okay, then I took a group to Long Island, or is it Long Island? I'm not sure. Uh, we were in Nickerson Beach, which is where in the, because it's more northern. We're now on the northeast coast. The breeding season is a little later in the year. They don't get started until May almost, whereas in Florida they're already hatched chicks are fledged by May. So here's an osprey that was coming in. I just like the fact that I got the osprey with its bloody fish in its talons. That to me was cool. Wings up, my favorite pose typically, but not much in the way of a background, but sometimes doesn't matter. But here we are. Now here's the other oyster catcher. I mentioned we had the black oyster catchers in California. Here are the American oyster catchers, and again, it's getting the backgrounds, the action. It's just more a dynamic photo of something other than the bird just standing there. And every now and then you get that moment. So most of the time, I will be the one who will say you don't really need more than 8 frames a second in your camera. But sometimes, if you can crank it up to 11, or in my case, 15, 16, 25 frames a second, you might get that one frame that has peak action where I'm not sure if both of its feet are off of the ground, but it's pretty close. And then there's the black skimmers, and here's doing what they do. They skim. They get little fish in their bills. Now that bill looks really fat and thick, but actually it's like a razor blade. If you get the shot of it coming right at you, it's like razor thin, but it's deep. And they skim along the surf like this in the morning, along the calm water, and they scoop up lots of little fishes to bring back to their babies. And then you have the common terns. Again, they're there, and they certainly let you know that you're in their territory. They will come and try to chase you away sometimes. So here comes that black skimmer. And this is another lucky shot. That's why it's one of my favorites, because even though we try to make our own luck, what do you do? So being prepared, it came right at me. But you can see how very, very thin its bill really is. So even though it's got that really tall bill, it's super, super thin. It's like a razor going through the water. And then they have their babies. So very cool stuff that their babies had just hatched, and we all got shots of those. I know some of you who are in the chat were with me on this trip, so you probably got similar shots. At least I know some of you did because I've seen them. You guys did great. My clients are an awesome group of people, and they're part of the reason why I don't go insane. I have really really good clients, and I thank you guys all for coming on my workshops. Pair of the black skimmers. Here comes one with a fish. So that's what you're really trying to do is you get them with the fishes in their beak. I'm calling your photos awesome. Uh, here's an immature um, American oyster catcher, and then they were getting a little tiff with each other, and I just thought this was another cool shot. You've got the dramatic leap of the one in the background, and then the one in the foreground with its bill open. You got to do a lot of shots, and you got to go out there for multiple days to be able to get it to work. You start learning the patterns of the bird. So this was all in that Long Island shot, and here it is feeding the baby. We all got this picture, I think. This one's a little older. It's got the feathers coming in. And I think there was a game called Angry Birds that I used to play, and I think all of these birds seem angry when I look at their pictures. It's the way it goes. Skimmer skimming. Now our sunset wasn't very good. In fact, there was a storm rolling in, but got in tight, did a burst of shots along the with the orange, the clouds in the background with the orange of sunset. And if you fool around with your white balance setting in post, you can make it look a lot more orange than it actually was. But that's not a bad thing. Here we go. This was, I believe, a sunrise. We were getting there early. It looks like this skimmer is flying over some sort of lava volcano. I assure you that is just the sunrise in the clouds, uh, magnified and distorted by the telephoto lens I was using here. I like to think of this shot as I'm running after the ice cream man. Hey, ice cream man, stop, stop. So here comes my little parade of little fluffy birds. Okay, so that was in July, and then in September, I took a group of adventurous clients on a full, I think, 13-day trip of Iceland. And so the next group of shots are all from Iceland. This is a famous sculpture in the harbor of Reykjavik uh, called the Sun Voyager. This is a very long exposure, actually. This is probably about 2 minutes long. The clouds are slowly moving there, and that's why they don't have a lot of distinct edges. It's because they're moving. So I used a long exposure. I used the solid neutral density filter, and I got this photo. This one is a zoom blur where I zoomed the lens while using a slightly long exposure. This is inside the Harpa Opera House, and it's mostly converted to black and white, but I left the yellows and oranges because every now and then they'll mostly clear glass, but some of them have a colored pane, and so I went with that. So this is kind of an abstract. Inside, again, this is in Reykjavik at the Harpa Opera House. Here's the famous church in Reykjavik. And this was at Blue Hour, so this was at about 9 o'clock at night. In fact, if you look at the clock on the church, you can tell you it was about 5 minutes to 9. Blue Hour came very late in Reykjavik. So didn't do much to actually, didn't really need to do much post processing on the shot. The sky really has that color. It's just that we don't perceive it as easily with our eye because as things get dark, your eye starts to lose its color sensitivity. So the camera picks up a lot more color than what we would normally see, but it's there. Here's our Sun Voyager again, early one morning. We went out with the group. We had a private driver take us around the entire island, which was great. Looking up into the Harpa Opera House. Now, this is a double exposure. There's two shots merged in the camera into one single photo here, okay? So it's, your eyes are not playing tricks on you. I just thought it was reminiscent of being in some sort of alien bee colony, of some beehive of some kind. Little light and shadow. These are all from Reykjavik. Long exposure of the swan. These were the swans in the little lake there by the city hall. Architecture. You get everything when you go to Iceland. You get architecture, you get some wildlife, you get some wonderful landscapes. It's very, very fun to go to Iceland. And then, of course, the very famous Kirkjufell, which is the witch's hat mountain in the background, and here's the waterfall in front of it. This is probably 8 to 10 seconds worth of exposure. We had a nice sunset. Got super lucky. Um, let's have some hearts for Iceland. All right, it's all good. Got the glacier in the background, and remember, Iceland is all volcanic, so that's a volcano up there. All since dormant. This is all lava formations. Here's a long exposure along the coast. That's why the waves look funny. So the waves are crashing over the rocks there in the foreground, but when you do a really long exposure, like a minute or so, they turn into mist. Gives it a totally different look. You can see the clouds are moving very slowly through this frame. Now this one is pure abstract. The weather was awful. It was 20-mile-an-hour winds blowing right at us. It was overcast and gloomy. So once again, I went for the abstract implementation before getting back into the warm van. So I went out there and did again a slightly long exposure and just panned the camera from left to right, back and forth a few times, and this is what I got. I love these ocean abstracts. They are definitely something worth experimenting with, especially when there's weather. If it's not a blue sky day, it can be really fun to do these. Then we have the requisite waterfalls, or fossa, as they call them in Icelandic. So this is Godafoss. Got right down there low, used a wide angle lens, long exposure, checks all the box. Post processing brings the sky back, so there actually was a sky there because it was a pretty overcast morning, and the result is something very, very pleasing, at least to me. We did see the aurora when we were in Iceland too. So here's the aurora. I used a tripod. Um, couldn't really see it very well with my naked eye. It looked like the sky was kind of flickering a little bit. The greens weren't showing up to my eye, but sure as heck were showing up to the camera, and so that was fantastic. Here's a geothermal field in Iceland. So Iceland produces a ton of electricity via geothermal. Just drill into the ground and get the heat to run turbines. This is captured with an infrared camera, so that's why it looks a little bit weird. But I thought it was a lunar kind of moonscape anyway. It looks like we're on the set of some sci-fi film. There were no aliens in this picture, but I liked the leading lines, I liked the landscape, and I liked it in infrared. Here's one of those areas. This is very reminiscent of Yellowstone with the hot springs. Smelled like sulfur. But they let you walk right out on there as long as you don't go in them. You're pretty good. You have to stay behind the rope, but you can walk out onto this lava or this field, and there's just all kinds of geothermal activity. It's an amazing place. And this is the road coming into that place. I liked how it snaked through the nice S curve here. This is Mývatn, Lake Mývatn. You can see the lava formations around it. Still a little green in September in Iceland. It was getting to be fall. Double rainbow always works for me, so I went with that shot. This is a reconstructed Viking church, sod house. Very cold, very windy. It was probably, in the upper 20s Fahrenheit. It was cold that morning, especially with the wind chill. I took out the infrared camera, which makes all this green grass look white. A fun trick that I use when I'm traveling is bring my infrared camera. And here's a church in infrared with the nice, um, the volcanic mountain behind it. Cool stuff. And this is one of the fjords in Iceland. Moody morning. Again, just really lent itself to monochrome treatment. So I went with it. There wasn't much color there to begin with. So you got that one boat out there to give you the sense of scale, which I thought was cool. This is the famous Diamond Beach. Late in the year, there's not as much ice washed up on the shore, but if you go to Iceland in, say, June or July, there's tons of chunks of ice on this beach. It was incredibly windy, and I set my camera down just about as low as it would get on the tripod to get this shot. Again, that sunburst is from the lens, not from anything I did in Photoshop. But if you notice, I'm shooting right into the sun, and that should give you your clue that this is also a multiple exposure. This is bracketed exposures capturing highlights and shadows and blending them together using a technique called HDR merge. So it's one of the items in my digital tool bag, so to speak. Waterfall, morning, nice shade. The sun was coming up behind it. I took the picture to crop out the sky. I again went with the tighter shot. If I had tried to get the sky in the picture, it would have just blown everything else out. It would have made everything else too dark. So I went with the trusted, tight, long exposure. This is probably, oh, 8 to 10 seconds. Lava, pumice, different kinds of volcanic rock on the beach. This is down near the town of Vik. The black sand beach, the basalt formations, very cool. I wish we could have gotten there earlier, but we had a bit of a drive to get there that morning. So we were there, and there was a lot of tourists there as along with us who may have been removed using the people removal tool in Lightroom because I do that kind of thing. One of my absolute favorite shots. This is one of the waterfalls in Iceland, and this thing just produces rainbows like you wouldn't believe. There were people everywhere doing selfies, doing, Instagram influencer nonsense. Finally got a moment where there wasn't anybody, and this is a very long exposure. You can see by again those clouds; they're moving through that sky. You get that silky water look. Took me many tries to get a shot that didn't have people in it. And our last stop in Iceland, this is a waterfall that didn't really have a trail out to it until recently. I think this is great because it has that glacial meltwater in it. You see that blue, that turquoise blue color. I think it's just amazing. So this is again Iceland, just an incredible place, absolutely worth going. It just it blows your mind the scale of some of these places. And then returning back to the States, I took a group to Chicago. Actually, I think the trip to Chicago, yeah, it was early. I got to get my chronology straight in my head. Yes, this was in the first week of October. We had glorious weather in Chicago. This is the Buckingham Fountain, the famous fountain from the introduction of Married with Children that we all know about. But we went there at the blue hour. It's lit up. Chicago is a fantastic place to visit. All of my clients there had a wonderful time. We did a foodie tour. We ate. We took pictures. We got a lot of steps in. It was fantastic. And again, that blue hour is just perfect for skylines. You got the Sears Tower in the background. Nobody calls it the Willis Tower, even if that's the name. And so it's the quintessential shot of Chicago. And then, of course, you've got to go see Cloudgate, otherwise known as the Bean. And there we are, reflected in it in the early morning. We were the only people there, except for one other Instagram person who kindly finished their shots and then let us all shoot. Nobody goes to the Bean before sunrise. Pro tip. And not only that, you get these cool blue hour photos from it. This one is the same subject, but with a very different treatment. So yes, I did use Photoshop. I actually just did this in Lightroom. I used the funky curves adjustment, a technique called solarization, and I thought it just looked kind of wild. And what you're seeing in what looks like tiles, that's the concrete on the ground reflected by the bean, and the image just pulls out all those textures. Sort of a minimalist version of the bean. Here's what you got in the foreground is Pritzker Pavilion, and then you got the skyline behind it. So again, these pictures say I'm in Chicago. There's no question. This was from the Art Institute. I liked the lines, and I thought it worked better in black and white than color. So I went with black and white instead of color. And then, of course, the L. So deliberate, longer exposure. I think I was panning. I can't remember exactly. I was doing a little bit of a pan blur here. So a longer shutter speed. You get that feeling of motion as this train goes through the shot. So you know you're in Chicago. You've got the L, but its subject has become more isolated by having the buildings blurred behind it. And then on this one, I've got the train. It's blurred, but I've got the focus on the tracks and on the fire escape in the background. Clouds were moving. I set up my tripod. I just love looking up. So there was an empty lot. It was like a parking lot in front of this building, and just set up behind the rope line and did a nice long, probably a minute or so long exposure. I can't remember exactly. Here's another in-camera multiple exposure of the fire escapes and the buildings in Chicago. Cool thing about these new digital cameras with electronic viewfinders that if you do a double exposure, it will show you the first photo in an overlay mode while you compose the second shot. So I was able to line up the angles just the way I wanted them in the viewfinder before I took the picture. I think that's an awesome use of technology. It's very cool. Chicago Exchange, the Board of Trade building. Here's a multiple exposure looking up at the Sears Tower. So it's my Sears Tower shot with the sky, but it's different. I always try to do something different when I'm ever where I'm no matter where I go. And I feel like it's my job to find different kinds of looks, things that are not traditional. One of my clients who went on the trip was really happy because we weren't doing quote street photography. I'm not a street photographer. We were really trying to do landscape photography in Chicago, which is a different angle. No pun intended. Here's one of Union Station. Did the black and white treatment. Really like the clouds behind the buildings. Thank you for all the hearts, people. That's great. If you like this, click the little heart icon. It helps me. And then we went inside the Union Station, and I set these up to do again slightly longer exposures. These are all handheld. I didn't use my tripod in here. So I set up. I relied on my camera's stabilization lens stabilizer to frame. I focused on the sign that said 2 trains, and then I let the people walk by, and they're there. They convey motion. But what I like about slightly blurred people is that they don't dominate as the subject. You know, they're part of the image, but they're not the focus point of the image. And I think longer exposures help with that. And she was going at it with her stitchery project. So this is the only picture on that trip that was kind of like street photography, although we were inside. It was not on the street. The Silver Streak did not crash into the terminal while we were there. Thank goodness, Jerome. Good question. So here's some casual pedestrian waiting for the light to change. Got the motion of the car. We've got the nice architecture in the back. Chicago is just a fun place to visit. And then we went down to the Riverwalk, and at twilight, here's one of the architecture tour boats. One of the boats went by. That's what the lights are in the bottom, that streak. So this was, again, a long exposure, probably 30 seconds or more to get that. So this is down by the Marina City building. That's the scalloped circular buildings. We didn't stay to see Rocky Horror. We probably should have. They were showing it at the Chicago Theater, but nothing says Chicago like the sign that says Chicago. So this is a zoom blur. Again, I set the camera on the tripod, slightly long exposure. I don't even know if I was on the tripod on this one. I might have just been handheld, and then just zoomed the lens back and forth, and so you get that blur. So this is all created in the camera without any post-processing whatsoever. It's not a Photoshop trick. And that's the Chicago City flag and the Marina City Tower. Okay, we're coming near the end. I know it's a lot of pictures. I have a lot of favorites. Took a little trip to my friend's condo in Hilton Head, South Carolina, they wanted photos for their condo, and so here's some of the photos that I got while I was there. This is sunset on the beach, longish exposure, get the waves moving, semi-abstract, very pastel, I think. Again, not lava, no thermonuclear. It is thermonuclear, I should say, because the sun is a thermonuclear fusion reactor, but fortunately we were safe from it. And then, of course, the Spanish moss. This is in Savannah. One of those tree lines. There's a spot that you can go to where it's an old. It's a plantation, technically a plantation, but not like not like a plantation that you're thinking about. All these trees were actually planted post Civil War, so none of this was from that time. These were all planted in the late 1800s. It just took them this long to get this large, and then they're covered with the Spanish moss. And then, of course, a little bird photography. Got down on my stomach, lying down with my lens to get the angle here so that I didn't get too much of the beach in focus. I was just trying to go with the bird in focus. Sandpipers, sanderlings. Here's another long exposure sunset. Tripod here, very long exposure, blurs everything, just becomes this wonderful pastel abstract kind of photo. Then I turned around and said, "Oh, there's a crescent moon. I better get that too." So this is looking south at sunset over Hilton Head Island with the nice crescent moon in the background at the upper right of the screen there. Okay, and I think that's it. So go back and rejoin everyone. All right. So far that is so that's like 100 and something pictures, probably more than I should have shared. But hey, it was a good year for photos. So what's coming up for next year? I'm on break right now for a couple of weeks before my trip to San Diego. If that is something that interests you, talk to me. I could probably still squeeze you in. I have a spot or two open on that workshop if you want to do that trip. So that's coming up. But I thought I would just pull up over on my browser. If you go to my website, which is luminescentphoto.com, you can get to my workshop schedule. Here it is. And so I've got a bunch of these trips. This is where you can register for them. If it's already closed out, like I think the San Diego trip is shows it's closed, just email me or message me. But I've got one spot just came open to go to Spain in March. So we're going to go with a private driver, 3 nights and change it, 3 nights in Barcelona, and then drive to Valencia by private minibus. So it's like a 18 passenger thing. Then they're going to fly us over. This is all included. They're going to fly us to Lisbon for a couple of days, and then we're going to have photo walks, and then we're going to have side trips or side quests, however you want to look at them. So for the whole itinerary is here. So we're going to explore the old city, the cobblestone, of course, all the Gaudi architecture. We're going to take a little side trip to Montserrat, and I've scheduled it to be in the late afternoon so we can be there for sunset, which is part of the plan. And if you're not a hardcore photographer and you just want to go on the trip with your cell phone, that's cool too. If you could, I have a discount for iPhone photography or cell phone photography, so you can read the whole thing here. Then Valencia should be amazing. We have a couple of days in Lisbon, and then side trips out to these other places, including Cascais, Sintra, Cabo de Roca, Fatima, Nazar. This is where the giant waves happen. The massive surf, the 100-foot plus waves, and they have those crazy surfers out there. So it's sort of a last minute thing, but if you're looking for a trip and you want to go with other photo enthusiasts, I have a spot for a solo traveler. drop me a note. Okay. South Florida, birding. To go back to those boardwalks, really easy, very low impact. We'll teach you everything you need to know about bird photography down there. And in April, the chicks should be hatching, so there should be babies there. Redwoods and Southern Oregon coast in May. This one sold out. I'm going to take a small group to Newfoundland, and we're going to have the puffins, and we're going to have the little fishing villages and the northern gannets. If you're into landscape photography, I would highly recommend considering my Badlands trip, where you can get shots of places like this. This is one of our favorite spots. Otherworldly landscapes, and I will teach you everything that I know about landscape photography to the best of my capacity. A little wildlife opportunities there, but if you want to go somewhere where it really looks like you expect the Mars rover to show up next to you, this is the place to go, and that's going to be in late September. Now, I timed it for late September because there will be a full moon happening during that time, so that's cool too. So that's what I have going on, and like I said, be on the lookout for 2027 for Namibia. Incredible place to go. I'm going in October with a small group. I'm going to try to go back there again in October 2027. I can't even get my years right. So that's what is going on. That's on the schedule for next year. Now, I want to just also say thank you for everyone who has subscribed to me. And even bigger thank you for those people who've actually paid to subscribe to me. You don't know how much I appreciate that. And for you guys, I have a bunch of things whirring and clicking in my brain to try to get going with for some extra premium content. One is at least once a month I want to do like a webinar that's more technical, maybe not a full-blown class because that's even more in depth, but a webinar type of thing where I go into some, maybe it's a technique or processing or whatever, processing particular shots where I walk you through how I edited certain photos. I am hoping to interview people. I missed my podcast. Unfortunately, I don't have a podcast co-host yet, but I am working on to try to reach out to some people to interview them and have a little photography talk, hopefully during the coming year. So fingers crossed for that one. I know there's a lot of great photographers on podcasts, but we don't always get noticed in the same way that, say, the independent news journalists do. And I want to just give a shout out to all the independent news journalists who I've started following and subscribing to on Substack. People like Ellie Leonard, y'all are awesome. Absolutely incredible work being done out there by people that you might not have heard of, but they're just doing a great job. So that's coming up in the next year. More 5-minute Lightroom is coming. More online classes are coming, and I hope to have some more webinars coming, especially for those of you who have really taken the next step and paid for a subscription. I started this back in January. I'm almost at my 1-year anniversary. I want to say that the last time I looked, I had over 1,100 total subscribers. That is amazing and is awesome, and I am so humbled by that. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate all of you guys' comments, likes. If you have an idea or you have a question, maybe I'll hold office hours, whatever, let me know. Send me a note, message me. But thanks again for subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe wherever it might live, somewhere up there in space. Hit the subscribe button. The Photographer's Perspective here on Substack. Happy Festivus. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, Happy Kwanzaa, all of them, whatever other things there might be out there. Until next time, I'm Jason Odell, and this has been a really fun time to hang out with you all. So thanks again for coming. I'll see you again real soon.